Your Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. Welcome to the program today. I'm Ray Samich. I'd like to introduce everybody once again to my dear brother and longtime co-host, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you. I am almost recovered from my throat ailments. So if people hear me getting a little bit raspy, I apologize in advance, but for the most part, I am almost good as new. Although when you get older in life, it's hard to say good as new anymore, huh? Because new was a long time ago.
Well, every day is a new day, Ray. You are a new person.
Okay, all right. I always like the way you think. You always make me feel better about things like aging, because those kind of things can kind of bring you down a little bit. You know, when you realize every day that there's more behind you than ahead of you, that it sometimes gets a little discouraging to people.
Yeah, every day is a new gift. We had no license or contract to be assured that we will be awake after we go to sleep.
You are right. You are right. It is a gift, and it's not promised, and it's probably not even deserved, but we are given that gift every day. So we have a new gift of this new day and a new gift to have you with us again today. We are grateful for that. And in our last show, we asked a very basic question. We said, do values matter? And the whole premise for that was that the world has changed so much: money, technology, speed of living, things like pandemics and how they have affected our thought processes and everything. And so we asked if values matter. We had an interesting discussion. I think it was a good conversation, but we did have some feedback after the show that was interesting, because people said values are different, for different people. And values for younger people seem to be different than the values for people that have been on Earth for a while. And values in a certain state or country around the world seem to be different, more conservative or more religious values or whatever it might be. So it led to kind of a foundational question that maybe we should have asked last week to start the topic. And that is, what really are values? Where do they really come from? Because if they are changing, if everybody has different values, then it's hard to even have the conversation about, do values matter? Because which values are you talking about? So let's take it back to a little more foundational question this week, Ratanjit. Where do values come from? What are values?
The seed which gives rise to all our value, one value, which is the seed for all value, is the truthfulness. And until we realize whether everything is based on truthfulness, our entire civilization is based on truth. And you are supposed to tell me what the reality is. I'm supposed to. So it is all based on truth. And if we start lying to each other, then we all fall apart. Then where do we go from here? If you go to a doctor and instead of telling you what your true condition is, he or she begins to lie on you, then what is going to happen to your health? If you're buying a product, if somebody is telling you the lies about the product, you're supposed to do this and that, it doesn't do that. So it is all, everything falls apart. And to some extent, this is what is happening around us, because that core value is missing.
At a very young age, if we are misled, during those foundational years when our parents are so important, or if families don't have parents or two parents that are there vital for them, and if those early years are not based on truth, because people say whatever they need to say just to kind of let the kids survive. So they're not teaching them the right things. They're not showing them and doing the right things themselves. Then does that mean that those kids have no values because they don't even know what truth really is?
Yeah, we see all the values you ask, what are the values? We'll be given a big list of values.
Right.
Your integrity, your kindness, your respect,
your
honesty, and all that. Somewhere honesty shows up later on. And so ultimately, all these values come from realizing the honesty. If in a relationship, if you met somebody, a stranger, and you don't like him for whatever reason, and then suddenly you come to realize there was a brother who has left home and never came back, and this is your own brother. With that reality, with that truth, your feeling would change. Right?
Sure.
So all our respect for another is ultimately based on our truth. And the amazing part is, Ray, the most amazing part of our living is, who do we lie most to? Ourselves.
Mm.
And all our stress originates from that fundamental lying to ourselves. Now, the question I ask you, how do we lie to ourselves? How do we lie to ourselves?
Well, I have to believe that our conscience wants to give us the real truth, and yet our five senses want to do other things that aren't consistent with our conscience. So that's, so then we probably make up excuses and justifications for doing things, as simple as overeating. Okay, well, I want to eat, this is so good, and I want to have more, and I want to have more, and yet we know that that's not healthy for us. We know that there's no reason to do it. So I know that's a simple example. There could be a lot more serious ones, but I think that's why we lie to ourselves. We say, no, we should eat this. This is good. And yet our body knows that we're not supposed to do that. Am I answering it right, or is there a better answer?
Well, see, ultimately, Ray, we are all parked in fear. We are all insecure. Whether you are a billionaire, or you are young, or you are a PhD, or you are white, black, American, Asian, we are all insecure. And our degree of insecurity varies, of course, and depends on what makes you more insecure varies. And then we're all fearful. We're all parked in greed. And so what happens is, when truth comes in our mind, that gets contaminated by these factors.
So why don't we take a step back there, because I'm sure this is related ultimately. Why do you think we are all insecure by nature? What makes us insecure?
Well, fundamentally, Ray, we think of us as this human body. I say, this is me. And human body by nature is designed to protect itself, because it knows that it is very vulnerable. It can be harmed by things. If you go into heat, if you leave, there was a 5-year-old kid who died, where their parents left in the car in a hot day. So under hot condition, your body cannot survive. In cold condition, you cannot survive. If you don't have enough food, you will starve. If you don't have enough oxygen, you will die. If you are closing your garage and your heat is off in your home, and you are turning the car on so that it can produce heat, but not realizing that it is producing carbon monoxide, so it can kill you. So we know the body in its innate wisdom has to protect itself. So it is constantly fearful of things it doesn't know, is fearful of walking into a dark place, is fearful of people who this body hasn't dealt with before. What are they going to do? And then, because it needs food, it needs survival, it needs things, it is parked in greed. It is parked in insecurity. And it thinks itself is a separate entity, is parked in ego. So there's nothing wrong or right with us. Those are natural gifts given to this human body to survive.
I understand that, but you said earlier it's everybody that's in that, no matter what race, what ethnicity,
right,
what age, and I get that. But you also said that wealthy people or poor people feel that way. And I ask you why the wealthy people feel that way, because wealthy people, they have bodyguards around them everywhere, so they don't have to worry about the dark place. They have the best doctors in the world to take care of them, so they don't have to worry about getting sick as much, at least. They're not hungry. Their heat is on. They don't have to worry about using their car with carbon monoxide. They're in a position where they can buy anything they need to keep them secure, keep them safe. So why would they also have insecure? And I know you're right, but I'm trying to understand it, because sometimes wealthy people are the most insecure of all. Why is that when they seemingly have no reason to be insecure?
Well, all of their security comes from falseness of owning the wealth. They think that that is going to give them security. They can hire the best doctor. They can have the best security guard. They can protect themselves. So their security is all embedded in their wealth. But then they're afraid of losing that. What happens if my business falls apart? What happens if stock market collapses? Or what happens? So they're constantly worried about the other side. And as a consequence, their fear comes from different direction. And then again, in spite of having the best doctors, Ray, when there is a sickness which is uncurable, attacks them, then what happens?
Well, they have a lot to lose at that point.
Yeah. So we all know that it doesn't matter whether I am a billionaire or trillionaire, I cannot buy an extra day of life. So it is all, I'm completely, although I feel artificially safe, but inside of you automatically knows that you're not. So you don't have the inner security, regardless of the outer securities.
It's interesting, because I know some young people, very young, they're in their 20s and 30s, who seemingly should have 50, 60, 70 years of life left. And some of them are the most insecure about aging. Okay. And yet it seems that I know a lot of 70 and 80-year-olds who are much more secure with their life, and they're grateful for every day, and they don't have that fear, even though, on the surface, it would seem to be the opposite. It would seem to be that somebody who's 70 should be much more worried about dying than somebody who's 20. Why is it that maybe that security of the fear of death goes away for many people as they get older?
As you get older, Ray, we accept death. We know that this is, I've lived a happy life, I've lived a fruitful life, and then you begin to value every extra day you get. And because you have gone through all these things, you begin to appreciate things differently. Whereas when you are young, you deserve better. How come I don't have this? How come that person has this? Why my father was not rich. So blame the father.
Right.
And
okay.
So that, and
maybe, I get, as we get older, maybe we relish every month, every day a lot more. When you're young, you kind of take them for granted, assuming that you will have many more, but fearful that you won't have that life ahead of you. So I guess that does make a lot of sense. It's a perspective difference that really on the surface, it should be the opposite, right? Because we know our days are numbered as we're getting older. We know that we inevitably are closer to our last day.
Now the question is, even people who claim to be truthful, we try to tell the truth. And still, they have not able to cultivate all these other value system in them. Because, Ray, if you have two stones, they are polished, properly cut, just like diamond, and one of them is real diamond, and the other one exactly looks like diamond, shines like diamond, but it's not a diamond. So what happens is, if your truth is like the artificial diamond, when it comes to the final test, that shiny diamond is not going to be able to cut through other glass or concrete or all that. It's not hard enough. So all our truths are erroneous. That is why we have no value system. Our seed is defective. If our seed was the right seed, we will have all these values coming out of us without even trying. Whereas we have to think about being respectful. We have to think about being ethical. We have to think about being kind. We have to think about implementing these values, because our truth is not the real truth.
All right. On that note, I think we're going to take a break, because now you've entered into a different realm. It's one thing to say different values are distorted because we're not basing them on the truth, but it's something else now to say that if I do grasp that concept and I'm living in a truth, now it's something else to say, is that the real truth, or is that an imaginary truth or a fictitious truth? It's hard to understand a fictitious truth. It doesn't, by name, shouldn't even exist. So let's talk about what that is. What is a fictitious truth? And are they out there? And what is the real truth? We'll find that out as we're trying to relieve our stress. And it's something that seems to be more and more prevalent around us, inside of us and around us. So let's let's get back to stress-free living in just a moment. Okay, we are clear. Darby, any comments so far? Anything you'd like me to ask?
Wow.
Always be thinking if there's a question that you have, write it down, and then you can ask me on the break, and I'll be happy to answer that for you.
Yeah. Now I'm looking at, I had jotted down, the seed for all values is truthfulness. And now I'm getting our truth is erroneous.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from too.
Yeah.
So we're gonna find out what that means.
And last week, Ratanjit or you spoke of the state of affairs and how we're in a state of emergency. So I was just kind of thinking about that during the week as well.
Okay, I will go back to that at the end. I will
Okay.
go back because he did talk pretty urgent message there at the end. You're right.
Yes.
Our Spreed, I don't know, I know they signed in. We have a minute if there's something you'd like to say. If not, that's okay. They're being anonymous here. Okay, Ratanjit, then with what Darby said and what I had led to as a tease before we went into the break, we'll come back and try to understand how there could be more than one truth. Because the nature of the word truth should indicate that there's only one.
Right.
Okay.
But if the truth is sold to you in the name of truth, but that's not truth. So then you have problem.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll come back in just a second. We're on the last commercial. We are back on Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us. A quick note, if you would like to join us, we always talk on these Zoom calls, which is how we are doing these programs now, and you're hearing them on the radio at AM 1330. We're at 101.5 FM in the Northeast Ohio area. You also can listen anywhere around the world at wintradio.com. wintradio.com will bring it up on your smart speaker, on any tablet, computer, mobile device. But we also are recording the shows on YouTube, and they are all uploaded. If you do a search for Stress-Free Living Radio, you can go back and watch any of these programs in their entirety. So there's a number of different ways that you can be with us. If you'd like to do live with us on Zoom, so you can interact with us during the breaks, then we welcome you as well to do that. And that Zoom link is on the website at wintradio.com. Go to the Stress-Free Living page, and you'll see the link that you can click on and join us, as so many people do every week. And we're always delighted to have those people as our live audience that we can interact with before the show, during the show, on the breaks, and after the show as well. Ratanjit, we went into the break and you introduced the idea that says we have to have the fundamental truth. And I am confused by that, because just by definition, there only can be one truth. Everything else is a lie. I mean, when we have an argument, when we have a discussion with anybody, if we are in a research mode for trying to find an answer, we have to say, okay, what is the truth here? What is the ultimate truth? Because everything else is not a truth. There only has to be one truth. What really happened? How did this really occur? Whatever it is. So when you say that we have different truths, and the different truths are causing us to become not only stressed, but make perhaps different decisions and different evaluations in our life because we're operating under different truths, that doesn't seem to even be possible. I mean, there's only supposed to be one truth. There's no such thing as a fictitious truth, right?
Yes. So why is it that two very highly ethical, intelligent, honest, with high integrity people can't agree on a single thing? They are debating. See, the thing is this. So where does the truth come from? Why is your truth different than my truth? And the reason for that is that if we realize this brain of ours is a data gathering instrument, it collects all our information. And based on that information, we establish our truth. You agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So based on information gathered by our brain is where we search, we ask questions, we do all this due diligence to find the truth. But see, there is a, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, there is a, you asked if I agree with it. I do agree with it, but if we are told that from somebody that we believe to be truthful, and that we believe to have integrity, and that we believe is truly knowledgeable, then I think we grasp that faster and more assuredly, even if it isn't documented in a book. Okay. I mean, if my father, who I love dearly and respect dearly and believe he's a very creditable person, if he tells me this, that probably becomes a foundation for my whole life, because I say my dad used to say this when I was 5 years old, and I believe it. Even if I'm seeing other people around me saying something else, or I read in a book that that's not right, I still want to believe that because I believed my father when he said it. Does that make sense? How does that fit in?
That is the biggest mistake our human race has been making.
Wow.
Because the reason that there is a difference between, Ray, knowing and knowledge. When you receive information from somebody else, it is only in the category of knowledge. We have not verified it. We have not experienced it. We have not put it into our knowing. So our whole system, our societies, half of it is based on belief. All our religion is based on belief. That is the reason that we are killing each other, because we believe. How can I not believe my religion? How can I not believe my father? How can I not believe my friends? Or because you have to experience. Now, the second thing is why the information coming from your well-meaning father or well-meaning spouse or well-meaning brother or yourself is erroneous. See, you have to understand that all our information is gathered by our brain. And how does it gather information? By our five senses: what I see, what I hear, what I smell, what I taste, what I touch becomes my database. Based on that, I would give you information. But it doesn't stop there, Ray. Based on my fears, based on my greed, based on my insecurity, based on my prejudice, based on my ego, I will modify that data. Is there a surprise that if you have 10 people standing in the row and they're asked to, they're sweared on their Bible or their religious, say, you are going to tell the truth. And they are now given a circumstance to watch and then come back and report. You'll find 10 different datas. So that is why all our truths are erroneous. Now, it hurts me to say, gosh, I can't even have faith in my father. I respected him all my life. I can't even have faith in my priest. He is my religious person. So all these are not experiences by me. They are not my personal experiences. But problem is, my experiences also are erroneous because all these experiences are carried out by five senses. So incoming data, which I experience myself, is erroneous. And the data I gather from somebody, I believe in somebody, is erroneous. So where is the truth?
Well, you're absolutely right. Based on what you said, when you say, I can't trust my father or I can't trust my priest, how difficult is that to be satisfied with that legitimate question? But if they also were gathering data with their five senses,
Right.
then their data was erroneous and they didn't realize it. Or if they also were doing it based on pure belief of knowledge and not knowing, and they're just passing it on that way, then it also is understandable. So there isn't, by your answer, by your response to that, I feel better that I can say it isn't that my father was trying to mislead me, or my priest, or my spouse, or my professor, or whatever it is. They were giving me their truth,
Right.
but their truth was perhaps erroneous because of how they gathered it.
Yes.
That explains it very fully. I have to give this, you're always so good with giving details on what you say. And I just have to share this real quickly, because being in radio, I have done a lot of research on the power of sound versus the power of vision. And there is a real scientific reason with our brain, how our brain processes, the speed of processing audio versus video, and the storage capacity of the ability to connect links of what we know in our history and what we're experiencing new. So in reality, the audio abilities of our brain are far superior to our visual capabilities within our brain. And that's why when police are getting reports of what happened when they're doing research, detectives, they will always believe what people say they heard more than what people say they saw.
Yes.
Because the accuracy of what we hear is so much superior to what we see. So I wanted to point out that scientific fact because we believe so many truths are based on what we see.
Yes.
I saw it with my own eyes, so
Yes.
I know it's true. But even within our own brain, we are far more likely to make a mistake when we see something than when we hear it. And even hearing it is probably defective as well.
Yes.
So I just had to point that out just based on my own research on that verifies what you said. Our five senses are not what we think they are. I mean, they're incredible. We have an incredible computer body that has been created, gifted to us, but it's still very fallible.
So that is where our foundational seed is defective, Ray.
Yeah.
So all our value system is based on falsehood. Not that anybody's fault. We are trying our very best. But if our truths are created by a limited instrument, see, even all the five senses, data gathered by five senses, at very best is incomplete because eyes can only see certain frequency. We can hear only certain wavelengths. We can only touch and feel certain things. So to begin with, you are dealing with an incomplete data. And then it becomes erroneous because it gets contaminated by your fear, greed, insecurity, ego. So this is what is our foundation?
Right. Or it's what we've heard from people that we believed and trusted that they gather the same way, as we just said.
We all gather the same way.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it doesn't matter who gathers the data. If your instrument is defective.
So is there, so you've explained why there's multiple truths. I get that now. So there can be fictitious truths, right. Even though that doesn't seem to be possible. So how do we figure out what really is the truth? I mean, if we can't trust our knowledge, we can't trust our senses, we can't trust our respected authorities. I mean, how, you're saying it's not good enough to read it in a book because that's just knowledge, that's not knowing. So how do we know the truth?
Well, the thing is that the biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I am the human body. I am me. My genes are this. My heritage is this. My race is this. My religion is this. My knowledge is this. That's how we define ourselves. But we don't realize that I am not the human body. I was sent in this human uniform, which I mistook as me. And I did not realize that I am neither old, young, male or female, black or white, Asian, American, Indian, because these are all definitions associated with this human form, human body, human uniform, not me. And I didn't realize that real me, which resides in this human body, which gives me life, which empowers me as a living being, is the truth, is the ultimate truth about me. And that truth, that enlivening force present in my human body is exactly the same force which resides in you. It's like connecting electricity to a light bulb. It's the same powerhouse which has a live wire connection to every lit light bulb. And light bulb, without that power, is useless. Doesn't matter how well designed it is. Until that power comes in it, makes it alive and makes it valuable. So that power which empowers me to be alive is the real me. And that power is exactly the same. So basically, we are all single. We are all single being, one. We are all one. So that is where the fundamental truth starts with. Ray, you are quiet.
I'm listening. I'm trying to do, God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I need to listen to you when you are very, saying something extremely important. And you always say important things, but this was extremely important. And I've heard you over the years, I've heard you say it before, but every time you say that, every time you give that explanation, it hits me a little bit more powerfully. The reality of that is a little stronger and deeper and more meaningful, that because when I'm in this show with you and all of our listeners and audiences in this show, I think we understand what you're saying. And then we go out into the world and we forget that. And it's so easy just to see American and Indian and Asian and black and white and young and old and different than me. And it's so easy to focus on what we see and not what we should know. And so I'm so glad. I think you should do that. I should record what you just said the last 3 minutes, and I think we should put that at the end of every show, because that's got to be driven into our souls, not even into our brains, but into our souls. That this is the secret of being stress free, and the secret of life, and the ultimate truth, right? So let's take a quick break, and we definitely want to talk more about this. And we also, one of our wonderful listeners here, viewers with us, asked us to expand on a certain thing that you said last week about us really being in an emergency state right now, critical state of urgency relative to the truth. So we're going to take what you just said and what she has asked, and we're going to put that together and talk a little bit more about that in our last segment. This is Stress Free Living. We're so grateful that you're with us today. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay. Yeah, you had me speechless there, Ratanjit. Speechless, which doesn't happen very often. My mouth always wants to say something stupid. But that was so well. You spoke it so clearly that time, just so flawlessly. You agree, Darby? He was right on his game there.
Yeah, I do. I saw you, and I know I was speechless too. You know, and I've heard that before. But as you were saying, I guess when we get older, we do appreciate it more. You know, there's a scripture that says there's no male, female, there's no Greek nor Jew, all are one, and one is God, or something like that. I'm not quoting it exactly right, but I've heard that all my life. And there's been times that I've tried to really, really live that. But, you know, the way the world is, they say, you know, I'm a black woman, or, you know, you're an Indian, or you're male, or, you know, you're this or that. So how do we get away from that? How do we move beyond? I guess this is the state of emergency that we're in.
Yeah. I think you are exactly right. I think for all of our, and I'm probably repeating what I'm going to repeat what I said here, but for all of our sophistication, for everything that we have learned and evolved into, I think the distinctions are just as notable today as they were, and maybe in some ways more notable today, because we're more clearly defining, you know, like sexual orientation. That's a big thing today in terms of calling people what they call them: she, him, her. Oh, we're back. We are back on Stress Free Living. We are so appreciative that you're joining us here today, and we welcome you to be with us every Saturday, whether you are live in the Cleveland area or anywhere throughout the country. And of course, you can watch and listen to all of our show in archives. Ratanjit, we only have about 10 minutes left. And you ended that last segment with something so foundational in terms of what the ultimate truth is. And during the break, we're interacting again with some of our viewers and on our Zoom call. And she asked a marvelous question. She says, you know, if that is the ultimate truth, we don't deny it. We really do believe that in our core. But it's so easy to forget that. It's so easy to go out into the world and just see what we see and hear what we hear. And it's not that. So how do we elevate ourselves to that level of understanding, of realization? How do we realize how important that is to know that it isn't the black, white, yellow, purple person that we're talking to, male or female, or whatever they want to be known as in today's society. It seems like as we have gotten more sophisticated with our knowledge, more sophisticated with our technology, that we're actually more defining those physical traits and characteristics, and therefore they're becoming even more important about our human uniform and not the reality of what's within. So how do we take that jump and stop seeing those other aspects?
Well, that's a very good question, Ray. Before I get to answer that question, let me put this truth to a test. If this is the truth, that we are all one, and when I see you, I see not your color, not your gender, not your size, nationality. I see the power which enlivens you. Suddenly, my respect to you is unconditional. My kindness falls into place. I simply cannot lie to you because you are the same power which enlivens me. I'm speaking to the highest order of this universe when I speak to you. So all our value system, which we call these values, integrity, kindness, respect, and ethical and fairness and all that, ultimately everything falls into place, doesn't it?
It does. It also, the way you just spoke of me, of the real me, I am suddenly secure in myself.
Right.
You also eliminated the insecurity because you just gave the real me a whole lot of praise and recognition that I don't feel about my body, but if that's the reality of who I really am, I feel that within me as far as how amazing I am just because I'm connected to that power source. Not me, but the real me.
Yeah, it's like when I'm walking, I realize I'm having this amazing divine power present in me.
Right.
And suddenly I realize that is the real me. And that power was before it entered my body. It is going to be there after this body goes away. So I have absolute security. I have no fear left. I have no greed left. My ego disappeared. Ego comes from my identity of being a separate being. I'm decorating this separate being with all the prizes, all the decoration, all the awards, all the degrees, and all that. I said, this is me. But suddenly, the real me is not all that. So all of a sudden, everything falls into place, Ray. Everything happens to us with this one order. Now, the question is, how do we realize that is the truth?
Right.
This is right now at the point of knowledge. How do we convert that into knowing? And it's so easy because it's the real truth. So if you look yourself and experience the life in you through your eyes, through the breath which comes through you, this human body is alive. Once you experience that alive life in this human body, you realize that life comes from a single source, my connectivity to the divine power at that point. So that divinity is I'm experiencing. I'm always with that divinity at all times. If you are a Catholic, and if you are in front of Pope, if Pope asks you a question, are you going to lie to Pope? Because you have such a high degree of respect for that. But now, if the God himself appears in front of you, how can you lie? So the automatically the truth falls into place. Automatically the respect falls into place. Automatically your desire to serve others falls into place. The purpose of life comes very clear to you, that I am placed in this, I'm given this human body with the amazing creative brain. This brain is not data gathering instrument. It is a creative power given to me to do what? To serve the divine present around me and within me. And with that, if you establish a business with that purpose, whatever product and whatever service you're going to offer is going to add the highest value to the fellow human beings because you are serving the divinity in them, your business becomes successful. It becomes sustainable. When you do that in your relationship with your spouse, with your children, with your friends, instead of calling them mine, you are basically seeing the presence of divinity in them and serving them. So automatically your relationship improves. Your joy, which you experience by doing that, by serving the highest order of this universe, makes you amazingly fulfilled.
Okay, so we've only got a couple minutes left. You have explained this completely and with great credibility, but you haven't answered the question of how we get there. How do we take that reality and make that our reality? How do I know, not just have the knowledge of Ratanjit saying it, but how do I know that for myself and therefore live that for the rest of my life?
Well, see, Ray, one thing we have to also realize that we don't live our knowledge or knowing, we live our habits. So ultimately, we have to cultivate this way of living into our day-to-day habits. So I would repeat this exercise once again. Every morning, you have to make this realization come real. You stand in front of the mirror and see the gift of this human body and be grateful. And then you see the breath coming out of you and the life in your eyes and see the presence of divine. So you bow to the divine. At that point, when you come out of that exercise, it has to be intense. You see the divinity all day long. So if you repeat this exercise every living day of your life, it automatically cultivates into habit, and you empower your life, you empower the life of people around you, and you become a person with immense happiness, fearlessness, and the value flows out of you.
So you said it's not about knowledge, it's not about knowing, it's about the habits that we have.
Right.
Do our habits give us that knowing? When we create these habits of this every single day, doing that exercise that you just spoke of?
It's a very good question. The habits generally, right now, all our habits are embedded in our knowledge. So when we begin to embed our habits in knowing, they are the correct habits.
Oh, wow. Wow, you say that at night with 1 minute to go. Wait a minute. You know what? You have just given us next show's topic, Ratanjit, okay? How do we embed our habits and knowing and that and knowledge? And everyone's going to have to watch this show to know how we got to that topic. because that's not something they can do on knowledge. That's something they have to do by knowing.
Yes.
Ratanjit, you just enliven our brains and our souls and our lives every week. Couldn't be more grateful. We also need to talk about the state of emergency, so maybe we can put that in that same show next week. Why we are in a state of urgency where we have to embed our habits in knowing, not in knowledge. Does that sound like a good topic for our next show?
Very good topic.
All right. So with that, we have to say goodbye to our audience here. Thank you for joining us. To our listeners all around the world, we are grateful for you. Most of all, to Ratanjit, for your love and your sharing of your time and your wisdom and your thoughts with us each and every week. And to all of you, we are grateful for you, and we thank you for being with us. And remember, we are all playing the same game. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you.